Mabukeng, what is the name of his device? That's the problem. We don't know. It's not named after him. Okay, is it in? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're about to go live.
Okay. Yes. Sit down. You will stand up when you say national.
Okay, can you make it in?
Good afternoon to the Gwangwa family, leadership, esteemed speakers and participants. My name is Notsawe Mafu. I'm a member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, and I'm the Deputy Minister for Sports, Arts and Culture. I'm directing the program of this memorial service for our revolutionary cultural icon, Ntate Jonas Gwangwa, on behalf of the National Executive Committee, along with my co-program director, Comrade Panyaza Lisufi, who's the ANC Deputy Chairperson of Gauteng Province and the MEC for Education in Gauteng. We will officially start our program with the national anthem.
Israel,
very much for that national anthem. Our country has learned with shock of the passing of our legend, Ntate Comrade Jonas Ngwangwa, on the 23rd of January 2021, just a few days after the passing of his beloved wife, Mama Violet Gwangwa. On behalf of the President Ramaphosa, the officials, and the National Executive Committee, our sincere condolences to the family and the broader jazz and music community, comrades and friends. Our memorial service today is a celebration of a life well lived, a legacy that will long outlast the 83 years he spent on this earth. The lineup of speakers and messages today is testimony to a person who personifies the struggle for our South African identity against a system that deliberately sought to destroy who we were as a people. A music and artistic career that spanned 65 years on stage. He not just triumphed through his music, but through persecutions and personal battles, personifies the strength of the human spirit. My task is simply to introduce these tributes, and we shall start with a short video tribute done a few years ago by the African National Congress that gives a sense of his contribution to the struggle for freedom.
In our country, a new social and political order is being born. Our artists have to play an ever bigger role as midwives of this glorious future. Let the arts be one of the many means by which we cultivate the spirit of revolt among the broad masses, enhance the striking power of our movement, and inspire the millions of our people to fight for the South Africa we envisage.
We in the ANC feel that what the ANC is presenting as culture, for instance, the Amandla Cultural Ensemble, represents the alternative culture of South Africa, the alternative. Now people often ask us, well, what will Amandla do when you are free? Or what is your culture going to be like in South Africa in the future? And we say we don't know. We don't know what it's going to be like. But we, through our work, we hope that our efforts will result in shaping a unitary, democratic South African culture that represents, see in the Amandla performance. Those songs are sung in South Africa today. today.
When the president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, spoke earlier this year, he drew particular attention to the role of culture.
Freedom now! Fight for freedom now!
I was called in 1980 to come and help with the instrumental part of this group. When I got to Rwanda, I saw all these people and the latent talent that was there and all the possibilities, and I just went crazy. I had to form a show that I was working with people who had never been involved in show business. People had to learn new things, formations on stage. I had to come in with costumes. Yeah, actually everything, makeup, put out the first lighting chart, had to deal with the sound. Of course, amongst Amanda, there are some accomplished musicians, and they were of great help, of course. I got the dancers and started working out routines with them, those that I knew, taught them to enhance the gambut dance, for instance, and the Zulu dance. I introduced the other dances, the Sotho dance, introduced the Tsonga dance, introduced the Xhosa dance, and working with the band on the other side, and then the choral music on the one side, and this whole thing was coming together then. And of course, instruments, very poor instruments. We're still having that problem to a very great extent. We are growing on as we are going. But that's what Amandla is, it's how it came about.
Then I was taught how to sing properly.
Amandla is, it's how it came about.
Thank you so much. What a moving tribute. Good afternoon. My name is Panyaza Lisufi. As introduced earlier on, I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng. I'm also carrying the mandate of being the MEC for education in our province here in Gauteng. Comrade Jonas Gwangwa, like others of his generation, rose above the shackles of apartheid. He was a trombonist, a composer, a vocalist, a producer, and a rising music star when he answered the call by our then president, Comrade President Oliver Reginald Tambo, to form the Amandla Cultural Assembly and to take forward the global campaign against apartheid. I will introduce to you legends who will pay tribute to the late Comrade Jonas Gwangwa. Our country has so many great musical icons. Amongst the most versatile of them is Sipho Hotsticks Mabuse, who's competent on drums, African drums, piano, kalimba, flute, saxophone, alto flute, and timbales, with timeless productions that he have produced. Who can forget that hit, Burnout, which hit across all our decades and is still relevant even today. He's a larger than life, and his presence is well recorded in our country. Our second legend is Mr. Steve Dyer, born in Pietermaritzburg, an accomplished and veteran musician himself, who was involved with the Culture and Resistance Symposium in Botswana and performed with the late Comrade Jonas Gwangwa. Let us now listen to our legends, starting with Mr. Sipho Hotsticks Mabuse, and will be followed by Mr. Steve Dyer. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Sipohot Six Mabuse. I'm a musician in South Africa. This is not one of the greatest moments for me to be talking about one of South Africa's greatest musicians, composer, the late Jonas Gwangwa. Firstly, may I say to Mujalifa and to all the family my sincere, deepest condolences for having lost my brother, your father, grandfather, and so on. I met Bra Gwangwa 40 years ago in Botswana. He had come to join Bra Kaifa Semenya, Sisleta, Dudu Pukwana, Hotep Galeta, and some American musicians who had been invited by exiled South African students. And these were invited to raise funds for the students who obviously needed the funding. And Bra Gwangwa was one of those extraordinary musicians who we had admired greatly in South Africa, even though we had not seen him. They had just released an album called The Union of South Africa, along with Bra Hugh and with Bra Kaifa. So they became the household names in Southern Africa again after they'd left for exile. So I was privileged in a way to have been the drummer in the process, because my band, the Beatles, were invited to be the support act in the process, and they had not brought in a drummer. And in my interaction with Bra Gwangwa, most of the time was when I would be practicing my flute. He would come into my room and he would say, "Hey, Sonny, I get nie geweet hoe die huis das ladies was so serious as van music." In other words, he was saying he did not realize that there were so many young musicians at home who had been serious about music. And the way I practiced the flute was such that I had admired what I did. And recently, I was requested by the Johannesburg Theatre to do a concert for the legends, in which I invited Bra Gwangwa, Sister Dorothy Masuka, Abigail Gubega, and Prince Limwasa to do this. What is important for me is that for him to submit to me to be the musical director of the show was a milestone, a privilege that any other musician would appreciate. And for that, I must say to Bra Gwangwa, thank you for recognizing that I'm just as capable as a next generation of musicians. You have left a legacy. Your advancement of the struggle, liberation struggle through music must be documented, such that the future generations must know that you are not just a trombone player, but a freedom-loving musician who even went as far as joining the MK and being trained as a military musician and forming up a Manja group to disseminate information around the liberation struggle of our people. And for that, we appreciate your contribution, your relentless, selfless sacrifice, so that today we are celebrating you. Thank you, Bra Gwangwa. Hamba kahle Mkhonto. Hamba kahle, great musician. We'll always remember you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Steve Dyer. First of all, I'd like to extend my sincere condolences to the entire Gwangwa family who have lost their mother and their father in such a short space of time. I know Brad Gwangwa from when I met him in Botswana in the early 80s, and I helped him form the band Shakawe, which was part of the Medu music unit. I remember Brad Gwangwa as a father figure. At the time, none of us were sure that we would be able to come back to South Africa again in our lifetime, and he really performed the father figure for me. He was a musical mentor. I learned so much from him. He was a great trombone player and a very distinctive composer in his own right. So if you listen to one bar of music composed by Bra Jonas, you know that that's him. He had a very distinctive voice. He believed passionately in the liberation of South Africa and the fighting for that. And so very definitely what we were playing there was freedom music. Whether he played in Shakawe, or whether he played in Amandla or under his own name, there was always a message of freedom. What struck me about him was that he was so passionate in fighting for the liberation of South Africa, and he galvanized all the musicians around him to do just that. He also, though, believed in the equality of all human beings on planet Earth. And he said at some point that freedom for some is freedom for none. Rest in peace, Bra Jonas Musa Gwangwa. We will miss you. But as they say about musicians, musicians never die. They just cry and fade away.
Thank you very much to our legends, Tate Sipho Hotsticks Mambuse, Comrade Steve Dyer, and members of the Amandla Ensemble who came together to record the tribute song. Musicians never die, but they just cry and fade away. What beautiful words. The president, when he paid tribute, and I quote, he said, "A giant of our revolutionary cultural democratic movement and our democratic creative industry has been called to rest." So you can see those words. Now, without wasting any time, we go to the next set of our programs. Another South African icon, Ntate Caiphus Semenya, known as a musical director and composer of note, with a long career working with many great names of jazz, pop, and various other African forms in South Africa and across the world. He will be followed by none other than Me Yvonne Chaka Chaka, singer, songwriter, actress, entrepreneur, humanitarian, and a teacher. As if that is not enough, she is also the African Union and United Nations Goodwill Ambassador to end malaria and other causes. A much-loved household name, sound and face across the length and breadth of the African continent. I therefore call upon Tate Caiphus Semenya to pay his tribute, followed by Mam Yvonne Chaka Chaka.
Duwalamba haitu, sanbonani bagiti, molweni mawetu. I greet you all who are gathered here to pay tribute to Jonas Musa Kwangwa. The first time I met him, I was a teenager. I was 16 years old, and he was 17 years old and 11 months. I had met him and Hugh at Davy Social Center in Benoni location. He was a member of the Huddleston Jazz Band, he and Hugh that is, and I was with my singing group, the Katzenjammer Kids. From that time on, after we had performed and we had seen each other on stage, I was impressed with the Huddleston Jazz Band because they were all young people like us, the Katzenjammer Kids. We frequently met at different shows and we began to know each other slowly and began to be acquainted with each other's talents. This went on for a couple of years or so. In 1959, all of us had an opportunity to work on the same stage. And how this happened is because the Union of Southern African Artists produced King Kong, the famous musical King Kong. It was the cream of the crop class of artists that was recruited to be part of this musical. Jonas and Hugh Masekela were playing in the pit. As young as they were, both Jonas and Hugh, they played alongside some of the best musicians of this country who were much older than them. Young as they were, they held their own. And it is in that orchestra that they learned quite a bit. King Kong traveled South Africa, and during this tour, myself and Hugh Masekela and Jonas began to really know each other. Sometimes we used to do like jam sessions, and we used to be friends together. We used to sometimes go steal a bottle of beer without the elders seeing us. Amandla, the ANC's cultural ensemble, and he went to join them, not only to join them, but to teach them music and to help them with arranging their music and making it palatable and making it more professional. A year later or so, with his kind of skills, he ended up being the leader and the primary, conductor of Amandla. And everybody in the ANC, who really know what he did for Amandla will tell you that he really brought in a new light to Amandla and made it even stronger. To say to you that Jonas was a very dear friend and a great colleague of mine in music. If I say that to you, it would be really a gross understatement. Because the truth is, to me, Jonas was family. He was more of a brother than just a friend in music. He was a comrade in arms, you know. Besides our love for music, we were bound by this one desire and one aim in our lives, to use our music as a weapon, you know, alongside the liberation movements that were waging the struggle against colonialism, apartheid, oppression, and imperialism. He had an incredible sense of humor, you know, incredible. He had a way of telling jokes that sometimes you would look at him and try to figure out what is he trying to say. And he'll be smiling, looking at you to see whether you understand the joke. And he will explain it again. And once you get it, he would laugh. He would laugh nicely, but almost like saying, yeah, you got it. You know, dummy, you know. I will say he was an intellectual. He really was, because Gwangwa could sit for days with you and talk politics and analyze politics. You know, he could talk about social issues analytically, you know, music, the same thing. We could sit and analyze. He loved choir music. He loved music. To him was not like just one thing. Music was like a whole, you know, whether it was classics or wedding songs. That's why he did what he did with Homu. I mean, that's a wedding song, but listen to what he did with the arrangement on that song. It's amazing. I never thought I could do that. Neither did some of us. But, and when I say some of us, I'm talking about you, Masekela, because we always worked together. I mean, we were all surprised when he did that. And listen to what he did with Flowers of the Nation, you know? Bomutsumi, you know? I mean, what can I say? He was that kind of musician. And he did it so well. He did it so well.
Hello, my name is Yvonne Chaka Chaka Tobela. Absheni Ndimadegwani. I am just so grateful to know that one of South Africa's sons of the soil did a lot for us as South Africans. He was a great superstar, a cultural activist, a father, a leader, and a great musician. That trombone, when Uncle Jonas held it or just played that trombone, you just felt the love, you felt the music, you felt the message. I, as a South African, I want to say thank you for opening our door, for opening the doors for us. Thank you for exposing and expanding our culture as South Africans and put South Africa in the world map. Dr. Jonas Musa Gwangwa, we appreciate you, we love you, and we honor you. When you and all the other leaders, Dade Kaifa Semenya, Dade Hugh Masekela, did the Union of South Africa, it showed the world who we are, and we were very proud that you did just what you did. So I want to thank your family that gave us you to be part of us and to do what you love best, disseminated information through music. You educated us, you conscientized us, and you showed us that music is love, music is king, and music does rule, and it did. So Rubala ka khotso, abutuaka, Rubala ka khotso, When Ali Ozivai, you did what you could. You taught us, you educated us. And ke batla hore ko ba ha gwangwa re a leboga ho menahane, to the family, to South Africa, to everyone. Yes, I do say amandla. Amandla. That's what you did. That whole musical amandla with Jonas. You showcase South Africa's talent, and we want to thank you for that.
As we are about to play the video live of this icon, I just want to remind South Africans of what the president said when he was paying tribute to this icon. And I quote, he said, "Jonas Ngwangwa ascends to our great orchestra of musical ancestors, whose creative genius and dedication to the freedom of all South Africans inspired millions in our country and mobilized international community against the apartheid system." So we take the time now to listen to the video of this live icon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Comrade Notkawe. Indeed, musicians never die. You know, I just feel like you are in a music history lecture. The cultural history of this country is truly amazing. That is why some of us are pushing strongly that the people's history must be part of our curriculum so that our children can learn and appreciate this kind of talent. And it is thanks to Jonas Gwangwa and his generations that we have this proud heritage. We now go to someone from a much younger generation who was mentored by Comrade Jonas Gwangwa. Sipho Ndlovu is a music composer and arranger. He made it possible as a music director of the South African Air Force for Comrade Jonas Gwangwa to perform with a military band and collaborating to present the Amandla Cultural Assembly concert at the State Theatre in 2015. I was there in that concert. What a concert. Over the last year, they worked together on the performance of his songs by the South African Air Force Band. As you will hear, their collaboration went beyond music. Sipho will be immediately followed by a struggle icon, an intellectual, a long-serving member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. He was a former member since 1985, Comrade Pallo Jordan. He also served as a Minister of Communications, Minister of Environment, and Minister of Arts and Culture. Comrade Pallo was an integral part of the international campaign against apartheid and intimately linked to the work of Comrade Jonas Gwangwa and did lots and lots of work on the cultural front. Let's start with Sipho Ndlovu, and immediately after that, Comrade Pallo Jordan will share his views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, for this opportunity. Good afternoon to you all and viewers at home. First, let me take this opportunity and send my condolences to the entire Gwangwa family. Ke re tshedisegang barungwa. Ntate Jonas Gwangwa, I called him Papa, but today I will call him JG. I am going to talk about my relationship with him as Sipho Ndlovu and Captain Sipho Ndlovu from the South African National Defence Force, in particular South African Air Force. I met JG in 2007 through the late Dr. Johnny Mekwa. I was doing my music exams at the South African Air Force Band. That day, the late Johnny Mekwa was one of the adjudicators. I performed with a big band, I performed with a big band for my exams, and I performed the song Flowers of the Nation, and Dr. Johnny Mekwa was very, very impressed about the arrangement. Later that year, in 2007, October, Tate Mekwa called me. I remember it was on Saturday. He said, Sipho, can you please give me that arrangement of flowers? Today is JG's birthday. He's turning 70. I want to surprise him with my big band, Gauteng Music Academy. He drove to my house and then I gave him the music. Then he performed the song at JG's house. Later that evening, I got a call from JG. He said to me, "Hey, Dumela monna ho kae?" Who am I talking to? I said, "No, this is Jonas Gwangwa." I was shocked, I was nervous, I was excited, He said, "Hey, man, I like the way you arranged my song, Can we meet next week?" I said, "No, give me the day and then I'll come." Then we met during the week, and then he said to me, I just want to quote exactly what he said to me because I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, "Usipho." I said, "Yes, now I'm going to call you Sips." He said, "Sips, I like the way you arrange my music. And I wish you were there when I was 20 years old. I was thrilled. I was emotional to hear a legend like JG say those words to me. And then he immediately said to me, you know, there is a project that I'm busy with, you know, Amandla Cultural Ensemble, the musical, you know. I want to work with you to perform the Amandla Cultural Ensemble. You know, I want you to help me to rearrange the music, you know, because I like the big band sound, you know. So I want you to write Amandla's music for me. I said, no, anytime, Papa. Okay, fine. That was it. And then me and him, we became friends. We normally call each other, you know. He would call me and ask about me. Hey, how do you do? What's happening at work, you know? I said, no, Papa, everything is well, you know. I said, okay, man, don't forget about Amandla. You must come and get the DVDs, you know. Then I went to his house, and then we'll sit there and watch the Amandla DVDs and stuff like that, you know. I was kind of new into this musical thing because I've never done one. Then in 2013, we met, me and him, and then he sold the idea to me that, hey, you know what? I love the military bands, you know. One day I want to work with a military band, you know. I said, no, definitely we'll make that happen, you know. No, I'll speak to my generals and we'll see what we can do, say. I told him that. He said, no, I will really love that, Sipo, you know. I said, okay, Papa. Then in 2014, we were scheduled to perform at Standard Bank Joy of Jazz in Sandton. And he was also scheduled to perform. So he called me and said, Sips, how about we do an interview for Morning Live, me and the Air Force Band performing Flowers of the Nation. I said, that will be wonderful, Papa. Then I requested my generals, and then they gave me green light. And then the Air Force Big Band and JG did the Morning Live interview. And JG was scheduled to perform on Friday, and the Air Force Big Band was scheduled to perform on Saturday. So Friday evening, he gave me a call and said, hey, Sips, you know, people came to my show expecting me and the Air Force Band. So how about I come and play with you tomorrow? I said, no, the repertoire is done, but I'll squeeze one song for you, Papa. I said, no, definitely, please do that. Then I speak to my fellow musicians. They said, no, we'd love to perform with him. And then on Saturday, we performed at Joy of Jazz, and we got stand ovation. It was the first time a military band actually performed in Standard Bank Joy of Jazz or any other jazz festival in the country. Then after the show, he said to me, Sips, Amandla is happening next year. You must start writing music now. I said, okay, Papa. Then I started visiting him. Then we'll sit again, watch the DVDs. But it was difficult for me to actually understand what is going on, you know, until he said, no, some of the songs I recorded it. Go and check my CD, Songs from Exile, and then you'll take it from there. Then he actually tasked me to arrange like 22 songs for Amandla, you know, like for big band, for Amandla. And then came 2015, we did Amandla, and he actually made me a conductor of the entire show, you know. He believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself, you know. He saw something in me that I didn't see. He was so excited, and then he said to me, you must now memorize Amandla. You must know what is happening. I said, Papa, I've got it. The music is written down. Don't worry. He said, no. He was actually excited about Amandla because Amandla, it's more educational, you know. He's talking about our history, you know. He wanted, especially kids, to watch the show and see what actually happened in the country, you know, but unfortunately, we didn't have funds to do that. And in 2018, the Defense Force normally hosts the annual armed forces in different provinces. So in 2018, we hosted armed forces in Kimberley. And the chief of the former chief of the South African Air Force, Lieutenant General Msima, he called me and said, Captain, this year we're celebrating centenary for Tate Mandela, you know. And please invite Jonas Gwangwa to come and perform with you. Then in Kimberley, Tate Jonas Gwangwa performed with us. And then it was beautiful. And then the Chief Defense Force, General Soli Shoke, gave him an award. He honored him. And then in 2019, Tate Jonas Gwangwa performed with the Air Force Band at Prestige Evening. Until 2019, he was admitted in hospital. And then since then, he was at home, sick. I was there with him. We were busy planning, writing new music to be performed by the South African Air Force Band. Unfortunately, he's gone, but his music is still here with us. I'll make sure that his legacy lives on, and I'll always remember him. I'll always keep him in my heart. And I say to you, Papa, rest in peace. SIPS is always there for you, and SIPS will make sure that your music lives on. I thank you.
Awesome.
Your loss is as great as and you and the recent is there problem? Gwangwa wasn't. Yeah, thank you. As I was saying, Jonas Gwangwa was an artist in the bardic tradition of South African poets, artists, and musicians. These were people who regarded the arts as integral to social life, who saw their role not only as entertainers, but as interpreters and commentators on social life and social reality. Gwangwa chose his path very early in life, after he was brought into the Huddleston Band at St. Peter's, he also joined the African National Congress Youth League, and it was as part of the Huddleston Band that he and others entertained the delegates at Kliptown for the COP in 1955. His musical career, which spans more than 60 years, was also notable for its radical edge. After being recruited into King Kong, as has been mentioned, Gwangwa was among the founders of the modern jazz movement here in South Africa. Together with Abdullah Ibrahim, who then used his original birth name, Dollar Brand, Makaya and Choko, the drummer, Johnny Gertze, the bassist from Cape Town, Hugh, and Kipi Muketsi. They produced the first modern jazz album in this country. What was also amazing about it, and was consistent about the musical career of both Gwangwa and Hugh, was that they always played original compositions of their own. There's not one American tune, not one non-South African tune on the jazz episode. All the compositions are by the artists themselves. On going to the United States, Jonas found himself in a milieu which was then in the midst of a major human rights movement by the African American people, and there was a strong mood of nationalism, especially amongst the youth and in the artistic community. African American musicians had always been strongly pro-African and nationalistic, as is evidenced in the modern jazz era, especially by musicians like Dizzy, Charlie Parker himself, Art Blakey, Max Roach, and others. One will note that there are lots of tunes with African names, some of them inverted, some of them non-inverted. There's Erigen, for example, which is actually Nigeria spelled backward, Night in Tunisia by Dizzy Gillespie, etc., etc. So Hugh and Jonas fitted in very well amongst the American musicians, given that nationalistic mood at the time. Jonas, therefore, was involved in radical movements in music, both at home and abroad. Amongst the numerous conversations that were held between South African musicians and American musicians, and I think a conversation which Gwangwa held very dear to his heart was one which went something along these lines, that in the New World, the Americas, and in fact in the modern world, music of African origin, jazz, rock and roll, R&B, these had come to dominate the popular idiom. And the American musicians were saying to the African musicians, you know, you guys have got something that we don't have. You've got the original sound. Instead of playing American music with an African accent, why don't you play African music with a strongly African accent? And I think that sort of confirmed Jonas and Hugh in the direction that they were going, in any case, playing their own original African songs, African music, using African musicians. Given Jonas's patriotism, it was inevitable that he would want to link his musical career to the struggle for national liberation. As an ANC youth leader from the mid-50s, he had always taken a very keen interest in the struggle of his people. In the United States, there was, in the beginning, a very small number of us South African students, a few musicians, Jonas, Hugh. The great William Makeba had opened the ears of American audiences to the South African sound. And South African musicians who arrived in the United States during the 1960s and after were relatively well received because there had been these earlier arrivals, William in the first instance, followed by Hugh and Jonas, so that when people like Letta and Caiaphas, Abdullah Ibrahim, and others arrived, there was already a very receptive American audience. And they were able to pursue their musical careers. When he returned to the African continent in the 1970s and established himself in Botswana, this was a time when there was a reawakening culturally and politically in South Africa itself. And Jonas was able to link up with that movement, especially through the Medu Arts Ensemble, then led by Mongane Surute, who had just recently returned from the United States himself. There were also movements inside South Africa, which they linked up with, resulting in the mid-80s Culture and Resistance Festival, which took place in Gaborone. These were important stepping stones in a radical cultural movement, which was sweeping Southern Africa at the time. One of the jokes which went around in ANC circles and even amongst our supporters, especially after the Soweto uprising of 1976. And there was a stream of young people who came out of the country, some in search of further education, many in search of military skills so that they could go back and fight for freedom. But what was striking amongst them is that all of them wanted to be poets. And I remember the German instructors joking about it and saying, yes, with a movement with so many poets, we expect that South Africa is going to produce writings that will outclass those of Goethe and Heine and all the German poets. We've got so many poets in the ranks. Of course, not all the poets were as good as they thought they were. But Gwangwa was one of the people who helped hone the artistic and other creative capacities of the young people who came out of the country post-76. As has been mentioned, when the ANC declared 79, the centennial of the Battle of Isandlwana, the year of the spear, Jonas was recruited by the late Joe Gabi into MK, and he traveled to Angola, where he was immediately put in charge of gathering together the young talent in all the camps. And in fact, I suppose all the settlements that the ANC had in exile, we always encouraged one form or other of cultural activity. Even in an outpost like London, we had had a small cultural unit using poetry and song, which we called Maimuye, which did a lot of solidarity work in Eastern Europe. But Maimuye was sort of, if you like, the opening salvo of what was to come. Because once Gwangwa began working with those young people in Angola, and produced that semi-professional group called the Amandla Ensemble. It put Maibuye in the shade. Amandla was different in that, in addition to poetry and song, was music, acting, and because they were trained by someone who had skills with respect to stagecraft, it was a highly professional production. Made a big hit, of course, where it was based in Angola, and did a tour of the then frontline states, Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania, but also took a number of European countries by storm. The Scandinavian countries, the USSR, German Democratic Republic, etc. Jonas's contribution was not only in terms of professionalizing Amandla, but also in discovering new talent. Many of the members of the Amandla band were personally trained by Jonas himself. Most of them in the beginning had mastered the guitar, the electric guitar, the bass, and conga drums. But the brass instruments, literally most of them were taught to play by Jonas Gwangwa himself. The dances as well. Jonas had been exposed to dance both in King Kong and in previous shows at home, but he'd also been exposed to modern dance, especially in the United States, and he used all that knowledge to improve the routines of Amandla. And by the time the movement was unbanned in 1990, one can say that we had a troupe that could have held its own off Broadway and in many other theatre districts throughout the world. I think what we want to remember most with respect to this comrade is his immense musical talent. It was recognized very early in his life while he was at St. Peter's College, which was why he was recruited into the Huddleston Band. And there's a music story attached to that, because Gwangwa says he originally had wanted to play the clarinet, but when the instruments were distributed for the band, he ended up with the trombone. But it seems as if it was not a mistake that he ended up with the trombone, because he mastered that instrument like no one else has done. And I would say among South African trombonists, he's probably one of the most outstanding. There are also a number of other dimensions to his life, which I think do need to be mentioned. While he was in New York, Gwangwa lived in a basement flat, which by, I suppose, chance and good fortune, sort of became a salon for South African artists, South African students, South Africans living in the United States. It was the one place you could go to any day of the week, and always you find good company for conversation, and there was always food available for us poor students. So it was a place of gathering in which we tried to recreate a South African environment as best we could. One of the more amusing attempts to do this was the smuggling in from a farm in New Jersey of a sheep which was ritually slaughtered inside Jonas's basement flat. We used the bathtub in the bathroom for that purpose. And while someone was busy and blood was running out, etc. Jonas remarked, hey, Munna, you know, if they are working on the drains downstairs there, if they're working on the drains, they're going to think a terrible murder is taking place. Of course, nothing like that happened. But it's one of the achievements of South Africans that we are, I think, are the few people who actually were able to slaughter ritually a sheep in the middle of Manhattan. The meal was accompanied with traditional beer and also by a brew, typically South African brew called Paina Paina. These were some of the fun and games one can talk about we had in New York. When Gwangwa was in Angola, our paths again crossed, and we had been very, very good friends in the States, but our collaboration working for the ANC together firmed up that relationship. And I would say that by the time we went to conference in 1985, and Jonas was moving between Angola and Botswana, he survived that murderous attack by the special forces of the racist regime on Botswana in 1985, an attack which was timed also to make a point because it happened on the 15th of June 1985, and the racists knew that the ANC consultative conference was going to begin the next day, and that was the point they were trying to make a slap in the face. The comrades who fell on that day, fortunately, did not include any members of his family. And it was as a result of that that they moved first to Lusaka and then subsequently to London. It was during that time that he was drawn into working on the musical score of the film Cry Freedom. And as we know, the score for that movie was nominated for an Academy Award in 1987. It didn't get it, but it's notable that it was nominated because it means that there was recognition of the immense talent that Jonas Gwangwa possessed. Coming back home took him via the CASA, Culture in Another South African Music and Cultural Festival, hosted by the city of Amsterdam in 1987, and also a number of other such encounters internationally. 1990 was the great turning point, of course, for all of us. And we sought to use Jonas's music, especially during the elections campaign in 1984. And as we know, music played a very, very big role in terms of galvanizing our people for that initial ANC victory. In remembering Gwangwa, one will remember, in addition to the talent, the man's commitment to his people, commitment to his country, his commitment to the struggle. And I think the musical legacy he leaves behind will outlast him. I don't share the view that musicians fade away. The names of great musicians live on long after they've departed. And they live on because of what they've left behind us. And the legacy Jonas has left us, I am certain, will live on through the ages. And as we dip our banners in saluting him, I want to say to my old friend, Lala Mokolo, for Gabao. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Datu Palo, Comrade Jordan, and Comrade Sipho Sips Ndlovu, and of course, the Amandla tribute. We just want to say to you, Sips, we also believe in you, and we also know that you will conclude the project that you made a commitment to Ndate Jonas Ngwangwa on. Our last two speakers, before the eulogy, will add to this music history, as well as the fullness of life of our legend, father. Her Excellency, Comrade Lindiwe Mabuza, a diplomat, a poet, an academic, a journalist, and a cultural activist of note, who dedicated her life to the freedom of her people and in the service of her country. She has already published more than 5 volumes of poetry. When in exile, worked as a journalist for Radio Freedom, worked for The Voice of Women, a groundbreaking ANC-led feminist journal, and co-editor of O.R. Tambo Remembered. After her return from exile, she joined the First Democratic Parliament and went on to represent South Africa in Germany, Malaysia, the Philippines, and in the UK. As chair of the ANC's Cultural Subcommittee, she was instrumental with Ndate Jonas Ngwangwa in the creation of the cultural ensemble, Amandla. Comrade Lindiwe will be followed by a member of the family of Ndate Ngwangwa, the son, Mujalifa Ngwangwa, who will give a different dimension to the life of this legend, also as family man and a father. So we will start with Her Excellency, Comrade Lindiwe Mabuza, followed by Mr. Mujalifa Ngwangwa.
Well, I first joined us in the 70s. At that time, we were not politically openly engaged in the United States. But I saw him within the ANC, in the ANC context, in 1977, January, when we went to FESTAC, the World Festival of African Arts and Culture in Lagos, Nigeria. At the time, President Mbeki was then the chief representative of the ANC in the area. ANC had brought to Nigeria the biggest contingent that could come from a liberation movement. We had the umgwenya to do the traditional dances. We had students from the GDR who were doing the liberation songs. We had a theater group from Mazimbu, Tanzania, with a theater, a play on June the 16th. We also had professional jazz musicians gathered from different parts of Europe, and Jonas then joined them, and he was the one who was in charge of the group. So that's where I was excited to see that we had been working together, but I didn't know he was also in the ANC. And after Festac, I had to go to Zambia, and there I brought up the idea that perhaps ANC ought to form a group, a cultural group that would do international mobilization. I had seen Ballet Africain from Guinea Conakry under Sékou Touré. They had done mobilization to put the image of their country, which had been devastated by colonialism, and when France left, it took everything out that was French, including the bulbs, the light bulbs. So, and the idea was accepted. I presented the idea to Comrade Dumanokwe, who accepted the idea. And then the NEC discussed the idea, they liked the idea. I was approached by Comrade Mzwai Piliso, who then said, yes, we want that. And I think the army, the military can provide the people to do that because we do culture in the camps. And so everything was moving so nicely. And he said then, who do we get to really make it professional? I said, you can try Jonas. He was in Festac with us, and he was in Botswana then. So Comrade Muzwai went to Botswana to talk with Jonas about it, and he agreed. In the meantime, I had been sent to Angola to go and talk with the leader, Tami Zulu at the time, who's Ngwenya, Tami, about putting the group together. There was Ndonda Kuze, who was Mpatlela, who was in charge of the group Amandla in Angola. So Jonas found them already rehearsing because I think the word had come through that they have to prepare for some international travels. That's how I got to meet him, to work with him. And I was in Scandinavia. The first tour of Amandla took place in 1980. They covered 6 countries, starting in Holland, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark was the last point. Everywhere Amandla went, things changed for the ANC. They just, as Jonas used to put it, were just here to till the soil for you so you can start putting the seeds around and everything. It literally changed the world for us in those countries. At the same time, as Amandla was developing, we were also building the school in Tanzania. And we needed all the resources possible for that school. One outcome, immediately after Amandla left Holland, the Dutch anti-apartheid movement with all the support groups had enough money to fund the building of a hospital in Mazimbu. So you had Amandla this side and you had Somafco here. And without Amandla doing the international mobilization that we had, we wouldn't have built Mazimbu at the pace at which it was developed. First building that was put by the Swedes was the teachers, the students, the science block, followed by the teachers of Sweden who said, we got a good example from our students, were inspired by what they did for your school, and we would like to do the teachers block at Mazimbu. After that, we had Roda Bannen, the Save the Children Foundation of Sweden and Norway, collaborating together to do the creche at Mazimbu. I mean, there was no end to what they wanted to do for us. Then came the Center Party youth, Helena Nilsson, who said the Center Party would like to do the library because we want to involve our colleagues in Iceland.
I had never been to Iceland, but it's through this project of Mthembu and Amandla that I was able to go to Iceland. They built the library. It was just every one project after another. I can't talk about the amount of money that was raised after Amandla left for the ANC. As I said, the first stop for Amandla was Holland. The next was Germany. And this was very important because at the time it was October 1980, and it was the time of the International Book Fair in Frankfurt, the biggest book fair in the world, international book fair in the world. And Amandla was brought to Germany at that time precisely because of the presence of apartheid booksellers at the fair. We didn't want them to be there. And our friends in Germany were adamant that this has to be the very last time apartheid appears at the book fair. And so indeed, when we arrived at the book fair, it was the day the Africans had decided they are going on strike. They are not selling books. They are not meeting any buyers. They are not meeting anybody until the stand of the apartheid regime was out of the fair. Amandla came in like rain. The Africans were so excited to see this troop of the ANC walking into the stadium, into the fair, like, you know, singing liberation songs. And then we asked them, where are the apartheid regime stand? They showed us. Amandla went there, singing, Nansindo Temnya Maferevuti na. You should have seen them scampering for their handbags, for whatever. They ran out of the book fair. And it was the last time they were actually in the book fair, because that day the organizers, directors of the book fair decided to expel apartheid. They were not allowed to be, they were told they would not be back there until there was a free South Africa. Indeed, in 1985, when there was a new ambassador in Germany, we went in as the free South Africa back to the book fair. That's one important, significant historical event that took place immediately with the presence of Amandla in Germany.
Thank you very much, Comrade Lindwe Mabuza, for that history. Indeed, we can never repay what Ndate Gwangwa did for this country. Mujalifa, now come and speak about your dad. Share with the nation what kind of a man he was at home and as a father. Over to you, Mujalifa.
He was a different man. He was man of the world, he was a man of the nation, he was a man of Africa. And as children, we grow up to understand, More Papa is not here, he's working. But we didn't understand because we were too young to understand. But growing up, I got to understand his words because at school, Papa was not there for events. At school, Papa was not there for graduations. And one day I asked Mama, and I said, Mama, Papa, where's Papa? Papa, okay. And fortunately, my mom was working for the airlines. And we took a ticket. She got some tickets, and then we went around, around the world. And then finally, I got to meet Papa. After years and years, I got to meet him in Norway. I think it was 1983 at Mam Zanele had hosted us in Norway. So this is where I could manage to see Papa. I think it was after 3 years. But as a father, he loved his family. He loved his children. As a father, he guided us. He supported us in anything that we did, in all our endeavors. More especially career-wise and lifestyle-wise and relationship-wise too. I always talk about that because he showed me how to have love. how to love and respect my wife and my partner. And he showed me through Mama and himself. He was a decent man in terms of clothing. He dressed nicely all the time. All the time, he was neat. No matter when, even if when he wake up to do breakfast, he was neat. He was a good cook. Sometimes you come at home in the morning and then you make just some omelette. You know, you'll be doing some omelette, and Papa will come there and say, "No, man, that's not how you cook." And then he start from scratch. But we knew as children that today we need Papa's breakfast. So you mess up your breakfast and your lunch so that he can come and cook properly and give you nice food and all those things, the spices that he learned around the world. So I managed to work with him for years. I think it's about, now it's over 20 years working with Papa, because some of them were in and out, on and off, like I'm saying. At some stage I worked for SAA, and then when I stopped working for South African Airways, and then he said, "No, come and help me." After working for South African Airways, I went to work for MTN, and then after I says, "No, come and help me." Then I left. I worked in one of the promoters, T Music Man, for years, producing Standard. And so I told him that, T Music Man is giving me the much needed experience in the music industry. It's giving the much needed skills that I could not hold myself. But Peter Clary and other promoters in this country, they gave me those skills. And so when I finally worked for him as his manager, I had better knowledge of the industry. I had better knowledge of what's going on, the ins and outs, copyrights, SAMRO, and all those things, and the world travels, bookings, how they work. Now I had more powerful knowledge, and he said, "You see, that's why I say come and work with me." And I said, "Papa, but sometimes I had to go through that to get the degree to be able to come and work with you, because Peter Tladi gave me a position of being an AR manager at T Music Man, which was a position that was not offered in any institution here in South Africa. So you had to learn through the peoples like Bopadi in New Orleans. You learn what an A&R manager is, and through his works, then I got to understand him. But as a father, he was a disciplinarian. He made sure that we do the right things all the time. He made sure that we respect anybody who comes, because he was a very humble person. And, when you say talk about Papa, to me, there's two of them, but in the other two, there's three of them. So his Papa, and then he becomes your brother. And then his Papa, he's the musician, a groomer, a mentor. And I'm saying that because as a musician, a composer, arranger, and performer, that's him. But he used to prefer to work with young people and groom them and guide them through their careers, guide them through their music. Some of them, they will come. I'll make an example. We had one of the greatest bassists, Glenn Mafoko. So may his soul rest in peace. When Glenn Mafoko left, Bongani Ngube came in, and then Bongani would say, when Papa is preparing a repertoire before a show, and Bongani will say, "Hey, I wish it I'm not yet ready." And I'll sit with him in the corner and Bongani, "Do you?" And then Papa will guide you. And then the likes of Percy Mbonani and say, "Percy," I think Percy had another group that we booked through Joy of Jazz. And I said, "Percy, I think my father needs you. I can feel that you've got soul and things like that. And he needs somebody who's like that to accompany him, who saxophone." And he said to him, "Jakes, I cannot go and perform it. I'm not powerful. You're undermining yourself before you even try to perform with him. So go to him. He will correct you." I know that I don't know anything about music. I'm the administrator, but when I listen to your performances, I think Papa will groom you even further and grow. as you heard before when Sipho was talking, Sips, Sips was remote, because even us, when we are not here, we come in, Sipho is around. This is what Papa enjoyed. A lot of youngsters, Bosabelo, young ladies, Boroda, the list is endless. The list is endless. So he preferred. So to them, he only not treated them as musicians, but also treated them as children. They would come even if there's no performance. Hey, Papa, and then we sit down and talk to them and guide them even talk about their relationships and how to respect their marriages. So with us as a family, we appreciated that because we got that from both of them, him and my mom. They never closed doors for anybody in the house. So they taught us humility. They taught us love. They taught us how to share them with the world and survive anything that happens in the world, because they guided us through what they were doing. When I talk with Papa, his history, I think I'm glad that Uncle Pado Jordan has mentioned some of the things that he did, raising funds for the ANC in 1955 for the Freedom Charter, because part of that, he respected the ANC moving forward. We were not born, and but him talking about the history, him talking about his relationship with the ANC from the times that he knew O.R. Tambo, because he was impressed from St. Peter's. He told me that he was impressed with the presence of the late President O.R. Tambo. So whatever the call came from President O.R. Tambo, he said, no, I am doing that. So he left his comfort of the United States to be, when he was called by President O.R. Tambo to be, but the Amandla was called Kunju to do ANC in Angola. So he coined it Amandla Cultural Ensemble after several discussions with the leadership. And he trained and groomed them. He was happy to work with those young comrades, and he respected them also, because as youngsters, having left their families and country to go and fight for it. So those who were involved in the cultural ensemble, they really, really, really felt his presence and his words. That laid basis for a lot of things, I think, also on Papa's side, because when he went to London in some of these works, part of it in London, meeting Bo Talitambo, who introduced him to Richard Attenborough, that helped with the movie Cry Freedom. So they recommended, no, this is the best person from South Africa. This is the best musician that you can ever get to perform and understand the work that you are doing in relation to the movie Cry Freedom, which led to a lot of Papa's fests, because his first starts from we were talking in the film, Papa's first starts from the 50s, including receiving those Grammys in the US in the 60s, that the history has not been told in South Africa, but we know in the US it's been spoken about. That was his first, among South African musicians to receive that. The first to receive an Oscar nomination, South African musician to receive that. But now when I discuss with him, he says, I'm the only African musician with 2 Oscar nominees, and that is not been told by our history. But that's a discussion for another day. So there's a lot of things that he did. You find yourself, when are we going to write our own history? Why are we letting ourselves not write our own history? Mam Lindy has spoken before, and there's certain things that she spoke about. And I remember Mam Lindy never forgot Papa from the times of First Act, including our president, Thabo Mbeki. He always visited Papa when Papa was ill. And Mam Lindy, we met some time ago. She was in Mozambique at that time, and she'd say to us, Mojalefa, sometimes you need to talk to your father so that I can understand what he wants. And I said, Mamzo, Papa speaks with his trombone. That's what he wants to do. But there's a lot of people around the country and the world. When I go and travel with him around the world, and they say, you know, you're dead. You know, you're dead. You go to Germany, you go to France, you go to Ethiopia, you go to Ghana, you go to China, you go to Australia, Brazil, and they'll tell you, hey, you're dead. You know, one of the most touchy thing that happened was in 2010 when there was the launch of the North Sea Jazz Festival in Angola, in Luanda, and then the president came, you know, and the president of Angola came and he said, Mr. President, we were shocked that the president is there. And the president says, no, I'm here to see Jonas Gwangwa because this man has walked and worked in Angola for a long time. And he put us in the map also because when they mention him, they mention Angola. His work say in Angola. So I'm here for him. And said, young man, who are you? I said, I'm his son. I said, okay, stand up. Talk to your dad. We'll come and talk. The experiences that around the world. I remember also in 2014, we went to Algeria to do the Sahara show. And then we had to talk about the role of arts and culture in the liberation movement. And the people of Saharawi, the right in Amman. And he said, tell me your story. Then I'll write the music. Amandla is South African story. But you tell me your story so that I can write your I can perform your story, not Amandla. Amandla is South Africa. Okay. If you want something like that, it's a move to associate and align all those things with your struggles, because that's our struggle. In each and every country has got a different struggle, but we are all fighting for democracy and freedom, because I think so in country identity, Cherokee, Spain, and all people. Talk about Papa is that I had to grow up fast. My sister Spanky was relating to me the other day, reminiscing about what it means to be Jonas Gwangwa's son. And she said to me, I feel pity for you because you had to grow up fast and become also his manager. You had to grow up fast and become a father to your brother when Papa is not around. Because I used to take my brother, I used to take my brother and my younger sister to the movies and things like that. So when we came back from exile in the 90s as children, we really appreciated that. We really loved that. And that was the first time, actually, as a family, all of us, the kids, were under one roof. So you get Spanky as the eldest daughter, you get Mpho, and you get myself, who grew up, who went to exile very young, in our teens and things like that. My brother and my sister, Baba Malus, went to stay with Tineke in Holland. Tineke helped the family with a lot of things. I mean, the community of Holland helped us. We had those family, but we have to be together because when I'm not around, my sister Mpho, I knew that Mpho will take care of Spanky. And then me and Mpho kind of with our from skill. I remember even my sister when she was studying in Cuba, Mpho helped me a lot. So Spanky knew that I have to take care of these two. These two have to take care of these other two. So Papa saw those dynamics, and he kind of it's only
what happened. We lost Mujalifa badly here. Thanks, Mujalifa. I'm sorry that we lost you from our studios here. I'm honestly not aware what's the problem, but what you have just shared with us is indeed amazing. We really appreciate the support of the family. These are the kind of things that I remain hopeful will be appropriately documented so that they can be shared amongst all of us, and we can appreciate that. Thanks, Mjalif. Apologies with that technical error. After those well-considered moving tributes, we now come to a very important part of this program, the eulogy that will be delivered by someone very well placed to deliver it on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Honorable Comrade Balega Mbete served as the National Chairperson of the ANC, as a Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Parliament, as Secretary General of the ANC Women's League, a constitutional expert, and the list goes on. Herself a veteran cultural activist, a poet, a writer, a leader of the women's movement in the country, a teacher by training. She headed the Medu Arts Ensemble and was a member of the South African Arts Trust Fund. When you speak about Medu Arts Ensemble, you remind us of the dynamic, the late Tami Miele. It is all in these many capacities that she worked with Comrade Jonas Gwangwa. We will lead in our comrade, former national chairperson, with a song, and we look forward to a eulogy on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Comrade Balega, thank you.
Embers of Soweto, out of the crucible warrior army of new age, despising gas, batons, bullets, defying centuries of slavery, advancing without care on armored cars, striking battles with clenched fists. The warrior cry, Amandla, rising in every throat, despising death, under muscles of machine, under muscles of butcher. Teenagers and the 8-year-olds press forward into the piercing storm, advance into the hail of death, advance into the land and weight of centuries, and tumble into an instant tumble. Freeze, tumble and sprawl like ragdolls in the dust. Collapsing under the barbed wire ice, the butcher's chorus baying, praise start, praise start. Out of this crucible, out of this blast furnace, rising sparks, and turns and will and soar into the red hot wind. These, the embers of Soweto, igniting the ice at Babylon, inflaming the hearts at Bubuletu, burning like wildfire the Buantenhavel, winging with incandescent embers, warrior cry, and will and soar with the collapsing child. ignites the triumphant freedom guns. Mother, children, father, people, listen. The cry phrase start rise on assassins' lips.
Program Director, the family, the Gwangwa family, and all fellow mourners, comrades, supporters, everyone who is in this memorial service. Good afternoon. These few words will shine the spotlight on the theme of love as it featured in the life of Ntate JG. Love molded him and made him into the shy young man, too shy to turn down the large instrument that was given to him, when what he really wanted was a slim instrument, which, as he realized later, was called a clarinet. So trombone it had to be. I can't imagine his life, the role he's played in it, without his trombone. We thank his spirits for intervening correctly those many decades ago, for there could not have been one who blasted his instrument the way Brajay did in his people, from whom he learned the music. The smile on his face, the sparkle in his eye said it all. I got this message yesterday from the family, and I quote, Spanky says, please speak about how Papa loved his people, the people of the soil, the old men sitting in a circle drinking umqombothi, and women dancing in their traditional way. He loved the different cultures and all the color in our traditional clothes, and all the dances. His face would change when he spoke about Bapedi, Mavenda, Amampondo, and how they dance and move with pride. Sipansula dance and its uniqueness, he was proud of it because there is nothing like it in the world. He loved this country and its people very much. Close quotes. His music was an expression of that love. If you ask what kind of person he was, I'll answer, wayenobuntu. All moments of him I've experienced are infused into that statement. He felt and reflected deeply on different matters of life. He was not one to excessively comment on all the time on things he doesn't know about. When he did talk or crack a joke, it was obvious he was a keen observer of human conduct, had an ethos and views which were long deeply embedded in his psyche long ago during his upbringing, long before he got that instrument, the trombone. Kitulezi says, I quote, open quotes, "When I say to him, I also want a love like yours, he'd jokingly say, God broke the mold." She continues reflectively, Papa believed in fixing things when they broke. Broken kettles and irons and things stayed because he'd want to fix them. When a shirt got old, he'd mend it. Shoes got a bit scratched, he'd buy some dye and renew them. He'd spend his time mending and fixing. I'd say, Papa, where do you get time to fix things? He said, Kitu, you make time to fix things. This is what love means to me from him. Make time to fix things, close quotes. He left us all that very loud and clear message to apply under various situations in our personal lives. Make time to fix things. Between you and your partner, you and the other person in the family, in the community, at work, everywhere. We all know our country has many things that are broken. Yes, the past broke lots of things. JG says we should make time to fix them. Prakwangwa's final contribution is etched indelibly in these memories he left with his daughters and children, who have shared them with us today. The story of his love for his wife, Sis Violet, is a subject for a novel. We all know he left for the UK and later the US. He was away from his people and country for almost 2 decades. Too long for a love of a young couple to survive ordinarily. But it's now history that, yes, their love endured it all. The day after her admission to one military hospital, I called Sis Vi. She was calm, level-headed, and in charge. Her motherly preoccupations about her family, that was her main focus. When noting my anxiety about her health status and encouraging a hopeful wish for her to come out of the hospital, for her to come back home, she ventured a brief, realistic response. Open quote, why would COVID take others and leave me? Close quotes. Very sober question. Not a trace of panic or idealism. She then went on to talk about her husband and the focus of her thoughts, even on her own hospital bed. I only appreciated it fully when the call came that she'd left this world, not very long after that call, a few days later. It was not a surprise that he followed her within the same month. Brajay and Sis Vi they had a beautiful love story as a couple, ups and downs included. Their children remain in the home in which the parents left them. A united testament of the African manifestation of family, solidarity, and love. This was Jonas Kwangwa, an embodiment of the love of his heritage. Hamba kahle Mkhonto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Baleka. Thank you very much, Makhatebe, for that fitting and uplifting tribute. We know that it's still painful. We have come to the end of this short memorial service on the life of Comrade Jonas Kwangwa. A warm thank you to all the speakers and tributes, those who produced the videos, and to the Amandla performances. Thank you to the Kwangwa family for sharing your father and indeed your parents with the nation. His legacy will live on. Thank you to the NEC members and all those who joined us in this tribute from across the country. Thank you to my co-program director, Comrade Panyaza Isufi. We heard Comrade Baleka, he loved his people. He loved all of us. And I think it is only fair that in his memory, we remember that COVID-19 is still with us. We must make sure that we keep wearing those masks, we wash those hands, we keep that social distance. Now, long live to the legacy, and I hope that our children and everybody will keep on learning and about this icon of the culture. As we are about to leave the stage now, we are going to leave you with one last song from the Amandla Ensemble. And remember what Comrade Baleka has just said, make time to fix things. Thank you very much.